And part of what my book is, I hope, is getting people to at least understand what 1619 forward means. Last point, and then I'll stop here, is that one of the differences between African Americans and white America generally is African Americans, when they see a police officer shooting a black man, they go to 1619 and come forward. They see 1619 in the whole entire story in that shooting. They see their treatment for the last 10, 15 years in that shooting. That shooting and a riot that occurs accorded is never about that one particular person, right? That's what the Kerner Commission taught us, right? No riot starts over one killing. That's not how riots work. Okay. Whites tend to see a police shooting very contemporaneously. This black man, this cop. That's why they can write Chauvin off. Chauvin's just, all right, he was Klan, went too far. Yeah, we done with him, right? But that's not policing. And they got a whole bunch of police officers to go on the witness stand and say, policing is this and Chauvin is that. Chauvin is not us. That's why you can find him guilty. That's why the prosecutor put 4 cops up there, right? To let the jury be at peace with hanging Chauvin does not mean you're saying all cops are racist, right? So because blacks see everything historically, everything, and whites, and I'm being overgeneral. I'm overgeneralizing to make a point. And then whites see nothing historically, but see everything contemporaneously. That's why there is disagreement.
Dr. Garrison, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Shifting gears just a little bit. I thank you for that. Your book talks a lot about social conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like for you to discuss this concept of social conservatism, and more in terms of black versus white social conservatism,
Mm-hmm.
because you suggest that white social conservatives is not about individuals. It's more about a political social worldview, okay? Now, and that it has nothing to do with skin color. Yet you say that racism and dehumanization of blacks finds a home with white social conservative worldview, but that individual white social conservatives find a home in racism and dehumanization of blacks. So can you flush that out for us a bit more? Can you discuss the specifics of the differences and perhaps how this came about? And I have another question in regard to that. What is black social conservatism? I mean, I have an idea that social conservatism is social conservatism in the sense that it is individual, but it's also representative of a political worldview, and that there's no separation there. So what is a black social conservative, and what is the difference between that and a white social conservative? You do discuss it somewhat in the book, but what does he or she believe about white and about blacks, and how do they view liberals?
Okay, a lot there. Okay,
yeah,
let's talk about black social conservatives first. There is a difference between black social conservatives that you get on Fox News and talk radios, and traditional or classical black social conservatives. Okay, so classical, traditional black social conservatives is what our parents were and our grandparents. Okay, they would say, look, yeah, racism, a problem, no doubt about it. Because of racism, and this is, let's say this is what my mother and my father told me, and I'm translating it into my language as opposed to how they told it to me, because they were Jamaican, so they had a different kind of twang in their voice. I've never been able to match, okay? All right then. But they would say, okay, if the white man needs to know 1 and 1 is 2 to get the job, you need to know 2 and 2 is 4. That's wrong? Yes. Is it unjust? Yes. Is that the way it is? Yes. And you are supposed to be successful, racism notwithstanding. Okay? Right? They do not debate racism runs wild. In our parents and our grandparents' generation, that was definitely true. But the point is that they have no problem with admitting that racism affects Black people. None whatsoever. But their argument was that's got nothing to do with you acting the fool. in the street, right? Okay. So they have no pretense that America has no sins. They just said that you are supposed to make something of yourself, right? That's my parents talking to me. All right. That's what I think is classical, traditional Black social conservatives. Okay. Black social conservatism, we have Blacks on Fox News and Conservative Talk Radio, tells you that racism doesn't exist at all. Okay. Racism is a figment of lazy Black people's imagination and a figment of whites, liberal whites' imagination to try and control you Blacks. Okay. And their conservatism is that racism ended in 1968 with the 1968 Civil Rights Act. Okay. Racism ended there. They might give you from 1619 to 1968. But after 1968, racism was over. And if you lazy Negroes got with the program, we'd be okay. Right? Okay. That's the difference between those two. All right. Now, white social conservatives, their hang up is national government telling them what to do. You have to keep that in mind. Their hang up is a national government telling them what to do. And then even the state governments telling them what to do. They have a right to do whatever they want. Now, that theory goes all the way back to 1619 and definitely was what held the Civil War together and what resentment was birthed during the Civil Rights Movement. All right, now, come back around. Social conservatives on the economic end are still upset that FDR won the election, and the New Deal changed America forever, right? It changed culturally and politically the role of the national government. So social conservatives on the economic end are still upset over FDR. Okay, the Depression was just a depression, and if the government had gotten out of the way, yeah, a couple people would have starved to death, a couple of banks would have went under, but America would have rounded back, and then we would have had this rugged individualism still prevailing. Okay. On the social end, they believe in, and this is where white evangelical Christianity comes into the story. Their issue is that that America is a moral country by moral behaviors, and when we let go of those moral behaviors and let go of our Christian heritage, America went south. And then these liberals came in, and first they want to talk about desegregation, and then they're talking about women's rights, and then the pill shows up, and then abortion shows up, and then gay rights come out of the woodwork, and they've been upset ever since. Okay, now that explains the culture wars from Reagan forward, because they bonded to the Republican Party because the Republican Party saw them as a voting bloc that wouldn't go anywhere if they took them. Okay, now hold that thought for a minute, back up a little to where Blacks come into the story. The Democrats was the segregationist party all the way until the end of World War II, right? And then the Democratic Party started to shift and started to go after Black votes and started to say, okay, this Jim Crow thing has got to end. That's what splits Northern Democrats from Southern Democrats. Okay, Southern Democrats from 48, right, with the election of and the Dixiecrats, right? They split off from the Democratic Party and say, we believe in states' rights, which included we will treat our Blacks any way we damn well please, and you Northern people had better get out of here. Okay, this is the second Civil War. All right then. 10 years, 15 years, they lose that. But that is part of their shift away from the Democratic Party and the party being liberal to being conservative, and they shift into the Republican Party, and that's why the South is now owned by the Republicans. Okay? Now, today's white social conservative will say, I'm not a racist. Now, they think a racist is Klan walking down Pennsylvania Avenue, and that's the first problem. They think racism is that simple. Racism is a Klan walking down Pennsylvania Avenue, and they're not that. So they can't be racist. So they are offended when you tell them that they are. All right, then. Then they say, oh, they say, no, What we need is individualism, and people work, and true, not everything is equal, but if you work, things will work out for you, right? Being a little oversimplistic. Okay. Here's the thing with white social conservative worldview. They can live with racist outcomes. They will say, no, look, we're not making racist outputs, but they can live with racist outcomes. They can live with blacks being 50% of the total prison population, while only accounting for 13% of the overall population. And blacks do not make up 50% of the overall crime rate, because even the FBI data tells you that. So when you tell them that, they come up with every excuse except for admitting that there's racism in the criminal justice system. Why? Because they can live with the result. Now, they're not walking down Pennsylvania Avenue in Klan uniforms, but they can live with the result of racist functioning. That's why they can live with it. Also, they get what they want out of the theory, right? This individualism, and you can't tell me anything, and you can't choose between people. That's another thing that's in white social conservative worldview, that government cannot choose winners from losers. The reason they're upset is because the political dynamics, the way they're going, they think they're going to be the losers. Now, they weren't worrying about government picking winners and losers from 1619 all the way to Civil War. And they weren't worried about from the Civil War all the way to the 1950s, when you had segregation running wild, and you had housing issues and redlining, and you had the laws we passed after World War II to help the greatest generation move into middle class, but they prevented those laws from applying to blacks. All of that history, they weren't worrying about winners and losers then, because they were the winners. Today, they're worrying about winners and losers because they think the political climate has shifted, and now the losers would be them. It's that dynamic that I get into in the book.
Too many American whites do not want to listen or deal with the ugly of race in America. How would you react to it? Too many American whites do not want to listen or deal with the ugly of race in America.
I wouldn't disagree. I think part of the problem is that we don't want to talk about history honestly. And here's also one of the things that I point out in my book. Going back to what Dr. Williams was asking me, one of the other differences between white social conservatives and black social conservatives is this. White social conservatives see America as themselves, and see white social conservatives, they see America as themselves and themselves as America. So if you say America was racist, that means they were. If you say America is racist, that means they are, right? White social conservatives do not separate themselves from America. They and America are the same. Black social conservatives have no such fantasy. Black social conservatives say America's cool, I'm good with it. It's got its issues, but I'm good with it, but I'm me, right? Black social conservatives do not define themselves by what America is. Now, blacks who see the world through white social conservative eyes do. That's one of the ways you can tell the difference between them, right? Right? They talk about America as we and I, right? And so if America's racist, then they're racist, right? Okay, then. And then they resent being called racist, and then they strike out and attack. Okay. Black social conservatives say America's a wonderful country. I'm glad I'm here. I'm not living anywhere else. But yeah, she got issues. And black social conservatives can make peace with America's great and she's got issues in the same thought, in the same breath. Those two can share the same thought in the same breath. White social conservatives, they can't share those two thoughts in the same breath. It's one or the other, and they've chosen that America is without sin. And that's also one of the differences between white social conservative worldview and classical black social conservative worldview.